Today we celebrate the 71st anniversary of a landmark Supreme Court ruling that significantly transformed the pursuit of social justice and civil rights for Mexican Americans and all Latinos across the nation. Hernandez versus Texas, decided on May the 3rd, 1954. This monumental decision, delivered just before Brown versus the Board of Education, fundamentally reshaped the legal landscape by affirming the 14th Amendment's equal protection for all racial and ethnic groups, including Latinos. The landmark ruling enabled successful challenges to employment and housing discrimination, school segregation, and voting right barriers against Mexican Americans, significantly improving countless lives across the United States. Arguably, the most significant milestone in the 96th year of the League of United Latin Americans, or LULAC, is its instrumental role in the Hernandez versus Texas case. The journey in this pivotal moment began in August of 1951 in a small town in Edna, Texas. A young Mexican-American farm worker named Pete Hernandez, after being bullied earlier that day, walked into a bar with a rifle and fatally shot Joe Espinoza. Pete was arrested and put on trial for murder. The case appeared straightforward, but when the all-white jury refused to give Pete a fair trial, a determined team of lawyers decided to fight back. Their courageous fight altered the history of civil rights, forever changing what it meant to be a Latino in the United States. We are privileged to have with us today esteemed individuals who will illuminate the enduring significance of this landmark case. Before we hear from them, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge some very special guests. First, we extend our deepest respect and gratitude to the family of John J. Herrera. Mr. Herrera, a past national president of LULAC, was a pioneering attorney and a distinguished member of the legal team for Hernandez versus Texas. He holds the distinction of being the second attorney of Mexican-American descent in the city of Houston. Please join me in recognizing his family. We're also honored to have the family of Alfred Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez was another distinguished past national president of LULAC and made history as the first judge in Harris County of Mexican American descent. Let's offer his family a warm welcome. Would you please stand? I would also like to introduce the dedicated members of the Harris County Hispanic Cultural Heritage Commission, who work to preserve and promote our rich history and culture. We have Mickey Alicelli, back in the back, Carlos Huerta, President Obama, and Mary Ramos. And our esteemed presenter and fellow member, retired Texas Supreme Court Justice David Medina. We also want to extend a warm welcome to the students from the Tejada Center, Izaguirre's charter school. Would you please stand? The dedicated members of LULAC. If you're a LULAC member, would you please stand? Members of the Mexican American Bar Association of Houston, MABA. And we may have some guests from the South Texas College of Law. We are especially honored to have with us today Ms. Marta Pedales, the daughter of LULAC's principal founder, Alonso Pedales, who was also the third LULAC national president in 1931, 94 years ago, and the third attorney of Mexican-American descent in the state of Texas. Marta, where are you? This important commemoration would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to the Harris County Hispanic Cultural Heritage Commission, Harris County Precinct 2, Precinct Together, Williamsburg, Providence, Texas State Senator Carol Alvarado, the Mexican American Bar Association, Houston, Sylvia Mintz, Councilmember Mario Castillo, Valero, Bernardo Uriski, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, Viva Magazine, Councilmember Julian Ramirez, Councilmember Joaquin Martinez, and we have Council 688, representing that council, my beautiful wife, Lily Contreras. Your commitment to preserving and promoting our history is deeply appreciated. Now, following the presentation, I encourage you all to explore this wonderful exhibit over here. It's a compelling panel exhibit that chronicles the remarkable 96-year history of LULAC. And now, it is my distinct honor to welcome Harris County Commissioner Adrian Garcia, who will share some remarks, recognize our distinguished guests further, and introduce our esteemed speakers and panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give that young man a round of applause. Especially thank these incredible members of the families that have so much to do with the reason that we're here today. So again, let's give these And for the young people that are here, a lot of times we take a whole lot for granted. And we just assume things were always the way they are. But the reality of it is, they were not. And it took many different events and incredible, courageous people in times that were so difficult and in fact dangerous to make things feel sort of normal today. So you're going to actually have an incredible seat to be an audience and now a witness to how history actually took place. And so I really hope that you will really just give your full attention to the conversation that's going to be had. Some of you will go on to become lawyers. And having this as a background to those discussions and that journey is important. Some of you may want to be judges, like the folks that we have here with us today. And again, having that framework in mind will be incredible for you to be able to make the most important and critical historical making decisions. And so today is a very, very, very special day, and I'm so proud of everyone who had a hand in making this happen. But before I go on, let me just very quickly recognize that we have some elected officials with us. First, I'd like to recognize the office of Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, who unfortunately cannot join us. And then we have someone who I just immensely love and respect, Josefina Judge, Josefina Rendon. We're also also joined by Judge Raul Rodriguez. I saw him earlier. We have Councilmember Julian Ramirez, I'm sorry. They were pulling a trick on me here. We are joined by a representative from Councilmember Joaquin Martinez's office. Celia, where are you?
Councilmember Castillo.
We're working through this. And then we have, once a council member, always a council member. We have Robert Gallegos. Where are you, Robert? And then I want to again thank Mitch for recognizing all of the sponsors. Let's give a nice round of applause to all the sponsors for getting it. The folks that you have heard mentioned, and then we have Doctora Adriana Tavez. Let's give her a nice round of applause. All these students belong to her, so just so proud of her work. And also, the judges that you have heard mentioned have everything to do with the state of Texas in some form or fashion, either at the county level or at the state level. But we are joined by a very distinguished member of the federal bench, and that is federal judge of the Southern District, Hilda Taylor. And she actually was sharing with me a bit of her history. It got started here in Harris County years back, and maybe she'll be able to share that history, which was obviously for the time, even, look, 1985 isn't that far ago, but to hear that conversation that she had to hear about why someone would not support her nomination to be on the county court bench is just absolutely ridiculous for even that time. So it's an honor to have you here, Madam.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
And so, going on with the occasion, I want to again welcome everyone. This is commemorating the 71st anniversary of Hernandez versus the state of Texas, the landmark 1954 Supreme Court ruling that recognized Mexican Americans under the 14th Amendment and challenged discriminatory practices. Now, I used to be a volunteer deputy voter registrar. This is the folks who don't get paid anything, but just do important work about registering people to vote. Obviously, we want to get young people registered to vote. All too often, I hear people say, "No, I don't want to get registered to vote because then I have to show up for jury duty." Right? Well, let me just tell you this. You're going to hear an important conversation. And as we have heard, there are times when people are thrown in jail for the wrong reasons and for inaccurate reasons. Mistaken identity, false statements, bad evidence or processing of evidence, or just, flat out discriminatory enforcement actions. If you were thrown in jail, would you want someone who understands you, your walk of life, your neighborhood, and the realities that you live in? Would you want them in the jury box hearing your case?
Yes.
That's right. Yes. That's right. So, young people, as you are thinking about getting registered to vote, understand that you may very well be put in a situation where you can be the vote that creates justice out of an injustice. So please, never ever step away from the opportunity to serve on a jury. It is so critical. And so it's important to remember moments in our history like these because they affect us all. When one person's rights are in jeopardy, it rattles the protections that are endowed to us by the United States Constitution. Another reason why it's important to remember moments like this in our history is to reflect upon and be inspired by, as I mentioned, the fighting spirit of those who stood up even when the odds were stacked high, incredibly high against them. And that includes Mr. Pete Hernandez, the defendant, a man who was working at picking cotton, and his legal team comprised of members of LULAC, Mexican Americans, those who were not a part of the traditional fabric, the status quo, the in-the-know type of crowd at the time. In August of 1951, Pedro Pete Hernandez was arrested on murder charges. 2 months later, he was tried and convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to life in prison. A Mexican-American legal team filed a civil rights case. And by the way, it's LULAC that made this happen. So anyone who is not a member of LULAC, you need to become a member. Young folks, we have youth chapters for youth councils for young people to become members of LULAC. Really think about it. But it was a Mexican-American legal team that filed a civil rights case from Texas stating that Hernandez was deprived of the 14th Amendment protection of his rights of jury procedure in Jackson County, Texas, because of his race. There were no persons of Mexican descent serving as jury commissioners or jurors, grand jurors, or petit jurors. The case was argued before the U.S. Supreme Court on January 12, 1954. The court was asked to determine whether Mexicans were legally white. Exclusion of Mexican Americans from serving on Texas juries was ruled illegal, and the judgment of the conviction was reversed. The Hernandez versus State of Texas case in the Supreme Court's decision in 1954 against the exclusion of Mexican Americans on juries represents a crucial moment in the fight for civil rights. So we appreciate everyone's attendance to be here. It really warms my heart to see so many people taking time out of this beautiful day to be in this place to hear this very important conversation. And as you hear this conversation by our distinguished members of this panel, please don't keep the information to yourself. Share it with others. Let them know what you have learned today. And so with that, I want to acknowledge these folks that have taken time out of their very busy schedules is this distinguished panel of speakers that we will have today. Judge Pamela Medina, Harris County Probate Court, number 2. Judge Erica Ramirez, Harris County Criminal Court at Law, number 8. Judge Natalia Nata Cornelia, State District Judge of the 361st Criminal Court. And our moderator and first panelist will be the esteemed Justice David Medina, Texas Supreme Court retired partner at Nelson. And he is a muckety-muck, but Judge Medina tells him what to do.
Good morning. Man, what a beautiful day. I feel so honored and so blessed to be here. May it please this honorable court of distinguished, esteemed justice, judges. Before we get started, and we have a great presentation for you, I just want to take a point, make a point of personal privilege, if you don't mind. There's so many legends in here, and we stand on the shoulders of all of these great giants, including my friend Commissioner Garcia. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for the Thank you for giving us Carla. She is amazing. She was here to the late hours last night, getting this set up for us, making sure everything runs smoothly, and we are so grateful for that. She makes sure we have all our meetings. She makes sure everybody's there. She sends emails out to us. This is important. I'm honored to be part of this. I had the privilege of meeting Commissioner Garcia when he proudly wore the blue. That was a long time ago. And I'll tell you from where I see it, it's been fascinating to see his level of commitment, not just to our community here, but the entire county of Harris. And he went from there, he went on to, when he became sheriff, I was living in Spring, Texas. And when those signs went up, a friend of mine, law school friend of mine, he was at Dominguez, we drove around just to look at those signs. Look at our neighborhood, we got a sheriff. His last name was Garcia. And then, of course, he's gone on to do great things. So thank you for your service. I can see that fly over there in the wall and the spider around that. I can't believe this. So I'm speaking of legends, you got one right here in front of me. Ruben Bettis, Ruben Romano. You know, for you, you students, and thank you, Ms. Gomez, for bringing your students here. Look him up. He's famous. There's a movie made about him. He was part of the Chicano squad, doing great things for the district attorney's office and later the U.S. Attorney's office. So thank you for all that you've done. You know, some 40 years ago, maybe longer, I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Contreras, Mitch Contreras. He's very active in everything that's good about our community. I happened to join Little Light Council number 60, the historical Little Light Council number 60 back around 1984, before I started law school. I had inspired to go to law school, to meet these friends and his brother David, and a gentleman named Benny Martinez, who has since passed, and Joe Mata in Orlando. I can't remember Orlando's last name. Remember Orlando? Yeah. And so those gentlemen that I was around, they were active, very vocal, and I hear you want to go to law school, you should go. So I eventually did. So those are some of the legends here. First came to Houston in the 80s. I met a pioneer who I know people of my vintage, maybe a little bit older, remember the great legendary Rudy Vara. He was actually personal friends with then President Bush 41, and then his son right there, Judge Vara. And of course, Judge Rendon, she and her husband who have been very active in everything that we do. So thank you. You know, the list goes on. You know, just really personal. Judge Medina's parents are here. I saw them earlier. Ralph and Greta. From their brilliant and beautiful daughter, Judge Medina, about their role in something very historic. So, speaking of historic, in my view, everybody you see up here, these fine judges, and a couple here that unfortunately couldn't make it, they're historical figures as well. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them so we get started here. Judge Rivas Malloy and Judge Baroguera, they were on the panel with Judge Medina and us here this, I guess it was last year. And so they're a very integral part of this program. Unfortunately, they couldn't be there as life those conflicts happen. They had a conflict today. But I want you to look them up, look who they are. You will see that Judge Rivas Malloy, she's from the El Paso area. She graduated with honors from the University of Texas at El Paso. She graduated with honors from the University of Houston Law School. And she's the first immigrant to be elected on the Court of Appeals. That's amazing. And then you have another legend, in my view, Judge Amparo Noguera. You've heard that fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, her mother is a very historical figure as well, Judge Yanes. She was the first Latina to be on the Court of Appeals in the entire state of Texas. Judge Guerra is doing an incredibly great job on the Court of Appeals. It's a difficult job, and I'll just tell you procedurally why. Because when you're on the district court level, the losing party has an automatic right to appeal, as my friend Mr. Ramirez, Councilman Ramirez knows, they have an automatic right to appeal. So these justices have to read everything, then they have to make a decision. From there, it's just you get to the Supreme Court, you don't have to take everything, just what the court decides are significant cases for the jurisprudence of Texas. But in all of her writings, she has probably about a 99.8% no reversals. So everything she has written that's been appealed has been solid. Well, these two ladies are up for re-election. And speaking of legends, there's a longtime friend of mine, Ross, please stand up. When I first ran for office in 1996, I was active in the community, but through my friend, the late great Odessa Reese, I met Ms. Morales, and she helped me. So I'm grateful to you for that. And fast forward to Judge Medina's first election, and boom, there she is. So, it's a small world, students out there. Remember who's sitting next to you. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. So these great judges here, we have Judge Medina, and you're up for election as well?
Yes, sir.
She's not up for another couple of years, but that's okay. Find out who they are. It's important, as Commissioner Garcia said, su voto es su voz, your vote is your voice. And if you don't vote, we don't have a voice. And it's absolutely important. And I can explain more about that a little bit later. So I know you're ready, you're ready for the program. Oh, I saw the legendary Yolanda Nevada Flores, and she's here somewhere. Okay. All right, let's, sorry, it's like this in my head. Judges, if you just, briefly, or as much as you want, just tell the panel about yourself before we get started with the program. I want you to know who they are, so you remember their names when you go to the ballot box.
I'm Erica Ramirez. I serve as judge of Harris County Criminal Court at Law Number 8. It's one of the 16 misdemeanor courts that covers all of Harris County. I'm very excited and honored, truly honored to be here today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Natalia Cornelio, the presiding judge of the 351st District Court here in Harris County, Texas. It's one of 29 felony courts in the state of Texas that serves all of Harris County. I'm proud to say that since being on the bench on January 1st of 2021, the 351st Court has disposed of over 10,000 felony cases, gone to trial, and I also do work with the Mental Health Specialty Court. And have a lot of student interns for the students in the back who are interested in interning at a court. So please come through as students. We're always looking for interns.
I have the honor of introducing another historical figure. This is my wife. This is Judge Pamela Medina. She is the first Latina in the history of this great county to serve, to be elected and serve on the probate court.
Most importantly, thank you all for coming. It's very important to our culture, to our history, to our future, that we all understand these types of cases, and to also come together and network and the camaraderie. So I truly appreciate that. I work in probate court. What probate courts do is when your loved one passes away, you come before me to probate their will. If there's no will, we do an heirship. I also deal with guardianship. So when you have a loved one who has lost their ability to take care of themselves, they come to our court to appoint a guardian. And as well, we do mental health docket, and we do trust creation. So financial planning is a lot of what my court deals with. But thank you again.
Just briefly, I'm David Medina. I had the privilege of serving Harris County in 1996 when I was then appointed by then Governor Bush, and I ran the election and won that. Thanks to a lot of people here. Was very blessed to have support from both sides of the aisle. Was reelected, and then had an opportunity to go back to the company I worked for as an executive. I did that. Thought I'd be in private practice for the rest of my life. I was up in Canada. Got a call from the Chief of Staff of Governor Perry. Asked if I wanted to be his lawyer. And truthfully, I said I'm honored, but I'm really fine where I am. Got another call. I went to Austin. I had the privilege of serving the governor at a very high level as general counsel's lawyer. It's amazing. So I thought I'd do that for a year, go back to Cooper Industries.
And the Treaty of Guadalupe makes a lot of what is formerly Mexico a part of the United States as well. So with that, there's a declaration that the people who are on the land that was used to be Mexico, is now the United States, they have a choice. They can become a citizen of the United States, or they can leave and go to what is now Mexico territory further down south. And so for the people that chose to stay and remain citizens of the United States, at the time, we're all familiar that with after the Civil War, right, we have Jim Crow laws, where there are laws that recognize under the law a difference between black and white people. Under the laws of the United States, Mexicans who chose to become citizens of the United States by staying on the land that became the United States were considered to be white. In practice, it wasn't that simple. Despite what the law says, Mexican Americans in the United States found themselves first through the early 1900s subject to violence. A lot of violence that was arbitrary, racially motivated. Mexican Americans found themselves killed for no reasons or lynched. Does anybody here, especially in the back, know what lynching is? Right? So as a criminal judge, my job is to preside over cases where somebody is accused of a crime. And a person cannot be convicted or sent to prison or executed without facing a trial, without having a jury decide that there is actually evidence for what they're accused of, and for a sentence to be issued. And if it's a sentence of death, it has to be by that jury, and that jury has to agree that that's just based on the evidence that they heard. Lynching is bypassing that whole process and killing somebody who somebody accuses of something without any trial, without any justice, and without any process. So in addition to things like violence and lynching that Mexican Americans were subject to, there was also the practice of segregation. And I know many of the older generation folks have parents or grandparents who are directly affected, and in the back where we have students, it's a little bit farther away. So can we picture what segregation means and what it actually looks like? Sometimes it means being denied something, right? In Texas in particular, there was a practice of denying Mexican Americans entry into restaurants. The Texas Restaurants Association said, no blacks, no dogs, no Mexicans. Not allowed to even come. When we were allowed to come, it was different. We had bathrooms outside, right? Whereas our white counterparts who were also legally white had bathrooms inside. If you go to a Rockets game now, right, it would be like you had to be in the 400 section if you were Mexican, and you could only be in the 400 section, and everyone else would be in the lower section. There was participating in any social event, you had to be in the higher level in a different section, and the quality of the chairs, the programs, the information that you had access to, how close you could get, how well you could hear, is based on just the fact that you're brown, not white. So that's the circumstance in the world that we're living in. We have segregation in practice. We have a exclusion from restaurants. There were Mexicans that couldn't be buried in funeral homes, where the funeral homes, if there was a small town and only one funeral home would say, well, you're brown, and the white person would not like it if you were buried. So that's the background that we're looking at as this case is creeping up and Blue Black organizations are popping up around the country and Texas in the early 1900s. No, I know.
Those were white dead people. They don't get buried in the same place. That makes no sense.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Judge.
Oh, it's okay. It was just a political.
Okay, I wanted to hear what you had to say.
So then, in the late 1920s, the early 1930s, we're starting to see a shift in what's happening, right? Blue Light organizations are starting to crop up, and we have Mexican Americans who are in the workforce and who are starting to become activists, demand equal treatment and civil rights. But we also have Mexican Americans who are serving in wars, including World War II. And this is veterans who go and serve their country, fighting for the rights of Americans and the rights of people. But when they come back from war, they don't have the same rights as other people. They still have to sit in the balcony. They still have to use the bathroom outside. And there was a big case of Private Felix Longoria. He was a veteran who was killed in the war. And when his body was returned to Three Rivers, Texas, the one funeral home refused to bury him. This was a major issue in this country. And veterans and different groups of veterans gathered and began to organize and partner with Blue Light, demanding that when they came back from serving their country, they expected to be able to go to a restaurant and not be denied entrance. They were decorated heroes. So this is also all in the background of this case of Hernandez versus Texas.
Well, thank you. That was just amazing. You know, she has an extremely important job, as do all of these judges. You know, especially, I think, I don't practice on that side unless I'm trying to do something what we call pro bono. If it's not too difficult, I'll volunteer to do something for free. And if it becomes real difficult, I'll bring in a real lawyer to help me. But what these criminal law judges do, it involves life, liberty, and your property. So that's what's at stake. So we need people that are smart, people that are intelligent, and people that can make those wise decisions. And these other judges can't say this. But they can't say this, but I can, because I'm not part of the judiciary anymore. I'm in private practice at Nelson Mullins. I endorse all of these fine judges and justices that you see up there. And I highly recommend that you remember that when you go to the ballot box. There you are, circulating signature pages here. I know Judge Rodriguez and his wife are doing that, Patty, and these judges here. So if you're a registered voter, take your time to sign the petitions. And if you're not a registered voter, get registered.
Yes.
And make sure you sign the petitions.
Sir, Mr. Medina, can you explain to the students why it's so important to know what the judges are about and why it's so important to make an informed decision?
Yes, I can do that. Let me just talk briefly about segregation. This is kind of an example right here. You see how all the smart people went that way? They left me here. So they segregated themselves. So here's why it's important to know who your candidates are, not just judges, but everybody. It's important to know who's going to represent you. It's important here on the judicial side to know who has the qualifications to be on that ballot. And I submit to you, everybody here that went on that ballot and was elected had the qualifications. I know Councilman Ramirez for a very long time, eminently qualified to do whatever he wants to do. And when I was in the governor's office, he had an opportunity to be a judge, and he passed on it because his children were low. So now he's in public office, serving proudly. His wife is also a judge. But you look to see who they are. And you will learn in this case that it is important to have judges who understand the community, the entire community. And whether it's Harris County, whether it's a smaller area of Harris County, like the city, or whether it's the entire state of Texas. You want people to appreciate and understand what you may be going through as if you appear in front of a judge for whatever reason. So I think the boss wants to say something.
Thank you. I ran a campaign, and what all voters should be doing is research on the candidates. So there are websites out there. For a fact, I know there's harrisvotes.org that gives you each candidate's name, their party affiliation, etc. There's other organizations that I know of off the top of my head. There's the League of Women Voters. They actually have kind of a bio of each candidate. So you get to read about what's important to that candidate. And so then you vote on that. You know, is this important for me? Is this important for my family? Is this important for my community? So those kinds of, you can Google the candidate's website. Each candidate should have a website, and that really delves in a lot deeper into who that candidate is. It also shows who endorses those candidates. So I might have, my last election, I had Commissioner Garcia endorse my candidate. So that's kind of, thank you. Thank you. That was kind of a way of me getting him to say, she's somebody I trust, she's somebody I believe in. So if you know the work that he does, then you trust his endorsements. So there's a lot of information out there. You don't have to go blindly. harrisvotes.org also has a ballot. So you're able to pull your ballot up, because your ballot is different from my ballot. You pull your ballot up, you see who you vote for. Once you see who you vote for, then you can go and start Googling and finding out who these candidates are and do your research. So it's an educated vote. It's not just a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Before we go to the next presentation, I want to go back to reference to the south. Like if you drive around this area, you cannot help but see Staff Sergeant Ricardo Garcia's name on there. Right over here. Does anybody know who he is? Yes. Go ahead there.
Steve, the CMA, congressional law with the elected for Richmond, Michigan. Has relatives in Galveston, by the way. I'm from Galveston. In the picture there, he's receiving the congressional award from President Harry Truman. My dad, his old aunt's all in Galveston, the Monte Bacari Garcia Congressional Medal Honor. It was the American Legion Post, but you look at the street that's named after him now. Sorry?
It used to be 75th,
Right.
and
Go ahead.
69, and now it's Bacario.
He was denied rights in a restaurant. I believe it was in Sugar.
Yes.
In a restaurant. Once again, we're talking about restaurants. So there's a lot of history there with Sergeant Macario Garcia. Please, you guys do some research on his.
Yeah, so the Congressional Medal of Honor is the highest military honor that our country gives to men and women who have served in foreign wars to protect our freedoms, those freedoms that allow us to stand here and talk to you. Amazing story. I learned this from the great historian David Contreras. I learned this, what I'm about to say, I learned this from him. If you watch the movie Giant, it's a 4-hour long movie. If you fast forward towards the end, which is my favorite part of the movie, there is a character who is believed, based on David's research, that is Staff Sergeant Ricardo Garcia, where he's being harassed in a restaurant, where he is being bullied, and the character played by Rock Hudson comes to his defense. So that is a reenactment of that event. So if you can't sit through a 4-hour movie, just do that part towards the end. And this is really happening. And you think about that movie, they were ahead of their time to even talk about it. Those type of things that were happening. Then you have, we know we've got the slide. Well, we can talk about that if you want to talk more about the other great veterans that were up there. They all served America in foreign wars, all decorated heroes, and they all, after World War II, came home thinking that, man, we fought for our rights. We're going to be treated like first-class citizens, only to learn that they weren't. Yes.
I'm from the Valley, and I would like to know a little bit about Central Ohio Cancer.
All right, thank you for asking about that. I got some notes right here. He fought in Germany. Yeah, he's from Pharr, Texas. Pharr, Texas. Decorated hero as well. He was a farm laborer. Unfortunately, he died at a young age, 32 years old. But you know, in Germany, he's fighting to stop communism. I'm sorry, stop the Nazis, right? To stop Hitler. And you know, I've seen so many war movies, and when I watch those, I can't imagine what it would take to jump out of a boat, knowing people are firing at you, and trying to get to the beachhead, and then carrying out their mission. You know, those are brave, brave men and women that sacrificed all that for us. So, a hero from Pharr, Texas, one of our own, so thank you for asking about it. All right, let me see who's next on the program. Somebody named Judge Medina. Oh, she's going to tell us about an amazing hero. Man, he's just an amazing. This is Gus Garcia. Judge.
Thank you. So Gus Garcia is originally his family's from Laredo. His family they could trace their family back to the original Spanish land grants of 1700. So 1700, that's prior to the creation of our United States of America. He's extremely brilliant, a very, very strong orator, very strong arguer. When he was before the U.S. Supreme Court, in fact, when you're arguing before the U.S. Supreme Court, there are lights on what's called the rostrum, which is similar to this. And once the red light comes on, you are to stop speaking, period. And he did. He was right in the middle of a sentence, and he stopped speaking when the red light came on. And then the justices asked him to continue, which is extremely rare. And he spoke for another 16 minutes, which is also extremely rare. He was very active with LULAC and with the GI Forum. He was a veteran. He was in the JAG and an officer. And he fought other civil rights matters, education, segregation issues, and he worked along with Cadena on other matters regarding Mexican-American civil rights issues. He stated when Pete Hernandez's mother came to him to ask to represent him, her son, that her eyes, she was tearful, she was sad about her son doing what he'd done and being in the trouble that he was in. And he said because of her tearful eyes that he could not deny representing her. But another very important part of this matter was, as was discussed previously, the Mexican-American plight had not seen the types of protections of the Constitution that we now have. And so Gus Garcia was looking for what oftentimes attorneys call test case. Which case will take us to the U.S. Supreme Court and create laws that protect us? And so he also took this case because he was hoping to protect Mexican Americans for future generations. While I was reviewing this case and the notes for this, I came upon a quote, and it's, "A society becomes great when its elders plant trees whose shade they will not live under." And that's what I see here with this legal team. Men who are not here today, but they knew the impact of their action, of their brilliance in fighting for others. Thank you.
Let me just, Councilman Hughes. What, his brilliant wife went into a criminal district bench here in Harris County. What's her ballot? 220th? 220th? 228. 228. District Court. She'll be on the ballot. And I know she is, because I know Councilman Ramirez also endorsed her. Now, they can't do that, but I can, so.
I can too.
You can, yes. Thank you. All right, so. All right, I'm going to get back to the program.
I can speak about the next attorney who was a part of the team. It's really important. I've realized that in the legal field and in life is getting older, it's never just one person. I'm here because of all of the folks that stood up, of all the community members that have laid the ground for me. And I'm telling our students today, we're here and we're working hard so that y'all can surpass us. It's super important that you understand there's no one person. We're a team, we're stronger together. And this team was incredibly strong. So Carlos Cadena wasn't part of the original trial team. He actually joined afterwards. So he was born in San Antonio and graduated UT Law School in 1940. He was, at the time when he graduated, the only Mexican-American student there. Can you imagine that? Yeah. And what did he do? He graduated third in his class. It was amazing. So after graduating, he returned back to San Antonio, served as assistant city attorney. Then he was drafted in 1943, and he served our country in the Army Air Force as a radio operator and gunner. After he was discharged from serving our country, he practiced law in Mexico City, but he returned back to San Antonio, where he served as partner at a law firm. And it wasn't really until he became a professor, Professor Cadena, at St. Mary's University Law School in San Antonio, that he became involved with this. So it was after Hernandez was convicted and sentenced to life that he became involved with this. So it's incredibly important, again, that it's not just one attorney. This is a team, and they knew the importance of what this case represented.
Judge Cornelia.
And I have the privilege of talking to y'all about team member John Rivera and just re-acknowledging his family members who are here today. Thank you so much. John Rivera was born in Louisiana, but went to Sam Houston High School over here in the area. And he was a member of the trial team for this case, bravely deciding to represent someone charged with murder because of the implications of having a fair jury and not an all-white jury in this trial. But he had public service in his blood. His great-great-grandfather was Jose Francisco Ruiz, who signed the Texas Declaration of Independence in 1836. And he organized 53 new LULAC councils in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, serving as national president in 1952 to 1953, and as legal advisor. And he also revived what was at that 1939 dormant LULAC Council 60. I know I see some members of LULAC Council 60 right up in front of me over here. He went to law So, yeah. He was the first political candidate that was Hispanic in Harris County, Texas. And he did die in 1986, but not before organizing 12 unions. And he really stood up for equality, and he stood up against discriminatory treatment of Hispanics in who are municipal employees in Houston. And so these are the type of Mexican-American lawyers who come before us, who inspire us, right? This is the kind of lawyer that made me want to go to law school. Someone that stands up for the law to make sure that it's protecting everybody equally. So thank you to John Herrera and his family who's here today.
I have the privilege and honor of talking about the late, great Judge James DeAnda. But before I do that, I want to recognize Dr. Cynthia Orozco, the preeminent LULAC historian. I can write notes, but I can't write a book. She's written 3 books about LULAC. And one of them, as I understand, is No Mexican Women or Dogs Allowed. So, speaking of women, you go back to that period of time, this great team all knew, but for you young students, women just weren't allowed. And that's just a fact. You can go to law school, graduate at the top of your class, and good luck. Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman appointed by then President Reagan to the Supreme Court, graduates from Stanford, one of the preeminent schools in America. No job for you. Can you type? And then you got the famous Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, graduated from Harvard, right? And then same thing. Yeah, you did really well in school. We don't have a job for you. Because I may take a job from a man who has a sports funeral. Thank God that has changed, because look what we have now. Isn't that amazing? Speaking of amazing, I know there's Judge Louis Lozano who's here somewhere. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Right there. All right, let me tell you briefly about Judge DeAnda. I'll tell you, life is just funny. Man, you just don't know who you're going to meet. I had the privilege of meeting him when I was a young lawyer. I knew his history. I knew that he was somebody that I one day would be like as a great, great lawyer, which, how do you top that? How do you top that? But his role, absolutely significant role. He was the youngest member of this team. And so the youngest member of the team usually has to do the hardest work. As Pamela's daughter, Milan, knows, she sat in trial with me all week this last week on a very significant case, one of the most grueling cases and emotional cases I've ever been involved with. And she did a lot of work to help our team succeed. And that's what Judge James DeAnda did. He's a graduate from, what's the name of that school? This is Howdy. Oh, that's where KK is going, the Texas A&M. So I had the privilege of getting a law degree from the University of Texas. I don't know how they let me in, but they did. And we got another law degree from South Texas College, which I'm proud of. But Judge DeAnda, so we need something for you to do. He's a brilliant young guy. We want you to do the statistics on this. Because in this county, Jackson County, for whatever reason, no people that look like me were able to get on that jury. So through his hard work, not only did he find that in Jackson County, no Latinos had ever served in the 70 years before that, but the surrounding counties, and I forget the number, but it's a substantial number. It wasn't 254, right? You know how many counties are in Texas? 254. So remember that. There were 70 counties that he did work in. And they didn't have these little computers right here that I have, my little cheat notes. They didn't have all that. He had to go look at the voting rolls. He had to do statistics. He had to do all of this hard work to have the evidence to support the argument that because no Latinos, as the term was used back then, Mexican Americans, hyphenated Americans, were allowed to be part of the jury system. So you think, okay, that says something. And so that set up the entire case what we call an appeal. So when Gus Garcia got up there to make the argument, to start to defending Mr. Hernandez, he objected to the entire, we call Venara, to the entire, this is discrimination, we object. So to do that, he had to put on evidence. He had to put on evidence that of all of these juries that have happened, jury trials that have happened in that county, not one Mexican American was selected. And they used the data that was gathered by Judge Tienda. In addition to all of those things that he did as a young lawyer, he also was the lawyer in the landmark decision involving segregation in Corpus Christi. And so if you bought your notes, teacher, Gomez, I want you to give these students a test after all this. So the case is Cisneros versus Corpus Christi Independent School District. He challenged segregation of Mexican American students. Now, Texas has been around for a long, long time. Judge Tienda was only the second Mexican American from Texas named to the federal bench. That is an extreme honor. I mean, being a federal judge is amazing. You don't have to run for election. You serve for life, if that's what you want to do. Now, the first federal judge of Mexican American descent, does anybody know who that is?
Reynaldo Garza.
There you go. Thank you, Judge. This is a trivia question that most people don't know. I only know it because I like history and I like my last name. So I was in New York several years ago at the federal building there. There's a big old life-size portrait of a gentleman named Harold Medina. So Harold Medina is the first Mexican American appointed to a federal bench. And he was appointed by then President Harry Truman. And he was also the first Mexican American to argue in the Supreme Court. And he also made the picture, the cover of Time magazine. So, you know, those are things, as you study this case, they're just, you find more and more and more. Last night when I was getting prepared, Ben and I were sitting at the table, I found a 70-page law review article about the Hernandez case. I've never seen it, so I finally started reading it, and I finished it this morning. It's just amazing, and there's more to it than just this. So that's who Judge Tienda is. I got the privilege to go sit at a baseball game with him. He's a huge Astros fan. I don't know him as well as some other people did, but I certainly remember him. He made an impression on my life. When I went to his funeral, the place was packed. They had an Aggie funeral, and that in itself is amazing. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And he served honorably as part of this fantastic team. And so we have. So who is up next? Okay. Great Judge Ramirez.
I currently serve in criminal court number 8. Misdemeanors are class A or class B. And part of my job is making sure that folks' rights are protected. Everyone is entitled to a jury of their peers. Everyone is entitled to have their rights protected and be treated with respect, to be frank. So when this case started, it really wasn't a question of whether Pete Hernandez was guilty. Okay, of course the attorneys are going to fight, zealously advocate for their client to get a not guilty verdict, but that really wasn't kind of what they were trying to focus on. So in Jackson County, Edna, Texas, Hispanics made up about 17% of the population, yet in 25 years had never served in a grand jury or a petit jury, so the folks that get called, okay? 25 years. Folks with Mexican-American surnames were not called. And so in order to tackle this, Gus Garcia, the trial attorney, knew that he had to be creative. And so what he did first was file a motion to quash the grand jury as well as motion to quash the indictment. And those are really fancy ways of saying, look, you're not doing this the fair way. You indicted this person for murder with a grand jury that has none of his peers. There are no Mexican Americans in there. There haven't been enough for 25 years. It's illegal. So the judge denied that. He says, no, we're going to quash the indictment because it was done, again, we're having a trial now with, before it was the grand jurors, now it's the pettit jurors, and none of them are Mexican Americans. So you are violating his 14th Amendment under equal protection. You are depriving him of equal protection under our Constitution. And the judge said no. The state of Texas argued that Mexican Americans were white. Raise your hand here, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Mexican American and you feel white. That's the reality. So the state tried to argue, wait, no, y'all are included. Y'all are white. It's okay. And he knew, Gus Garcia went on saying that that's not fair. So he had two burdens. So the first burden that he put was to say that Mexican Americans are a class apart. He said, we're not white. It's not just black and white. We are a class apart. So he had to show that through evidence. So what did he do? He got folks to testify, showed folks from the community, citizens who said, yes, whites and Mexicans are treated differently. Did you know that Mexican American students over there in Edna were forced to go to a different school up into the 4th grade? That doesn't sound fair to me. Mexican Americans had a very slight representation in the community group, as we talked about that restaurant with the sign, no Mexican served. And in the own courthouse that they practiced in, there were 2 men's bathrooms. One was unmarked, the other was colored men / hombres aquí. Okay, in the own courthouse that he had to argue this. Yet the trial court said, no, it's not a violation of its equal protection. And I'd say this student specifically because at the trial court he got denied. He got told, nope, you're wrong, sit down. And what did he do? He got back up and moved forward with the appeal. I had a young student over here I was talking to, and I said, anyone interested in law school? And she said, yeah, it sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It's hard, but it's worth it. Amen. There was another young student too that was very smart. He's chatting with his friends over there. But the point is that he got told no, and he moved forward anyways. Okay? So, he first said, yes, we're a class apart. And then after that, he has to show discrimination. And he did that again with the no Mexican serve sign, with everything you've heard before. The state argued and said it was a coincidence that in 26 years that no Mexican Americans have served. Right? It was a huge coincidence. And so Mr. Hernandez was convicted. Okay? So it went through the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals agreed with the trial court. Again, the attorneys are told, no, you're wrong. The Court of Appeals said Mexican Americans are legally white. There's no distinction. Mexicans are not separate race, but are with white people of Spanish descent. And that does not violate the 14th Amendment. And what did the team do? They said, let's keep going. And they went to the Supreme Court.
Thank you. The Honorable Judge Pamela Medina. Can you tell us why Gus Garcia took this case?
So, as was discussed previously, there was obviously systemic racism. There was exclusion of the Mexican American people in many areas, not just restaurants, but education, juries, etc. There was just an active exclusion. But because, as the states were arguing in the trial level as well as the appellate level, the state argues that because we have cases that confirm a Mexican American is a white person, there's no way that they can be discriminated against. It's not possible because they're white. So who are they going to be discriminated against by? Their own white counterparts? So that was the state's argument. And there was a plethora of cases that actually supported that legal argument. There's a Salazar case, there's a Sanchez case, Lucille, I'm trying to remember, I'm sorry. I think there were at least 5 to 6 cases here in Texas that supports the state's argument that you can't be discriminated against by white people if you're white. And so Gus Garcia and the team, they were looking for, as I stated previously, a test case. How do we get those protections? Because we knew in Jackson County that there had not been a single Mexican American juror. So while the jury selection process, or processes, right, allow for a very fair, impartial, and legal manner of choosing jurors, the actual citizens of Jackson County were the ones imputing the discriminatory and exclusionary effects. So once the team saw that happening, they did what's called preserve the record at the trial level. And by preserving the record, you're objecting to something. And in this specific case, as Judge Ramirez stated, the legal team objected to the fact that Mr. Hernandez did not have a jury of his peers. And so that's where we bring in the constitutional aspect here, because the 14th Amendment protects due process and equal protection of our laws. And if you don't have a jury of your peers, then you are, quote unquote, what's termed repugnant to the Constitution. Your actions aren't in line with our Constitution. And so that's when you apply to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I can never say this word right, phrase right. It's a petition for writ of certiorari. Thank you. And that is extremely rare that your petition is granted by the United States Supreme Court. It is so rare. But our team, they prevailed, and they were able to argue before our U.S. Supreme Court. And their main argument was this fact that, as Judge Ramirez stated, that while Mexicans, yes, the jury selection on paper was legal, in practice, the white jury commissioners and the white jurors were discriminating in practice. So that action of discrimination is what brings us into the U.S. Supreme Court. And the state argues you can't discriminate against your own people, but they show by evidence from the attorney Vianda that there had been systemic exclusionary practices, not only in jury selection, but in education and in many other areas. And so they're able to take that in. One of the other arguments that the state made is Norris v. Alabama. And Norris v. Alabama also says that if you're a black citizen and being discriminated by white groups, that those discriminatory acts are protected by the 14th Amendment. So our team had to come in and show how we are actually, while we're not black, we're on paper, we're white, but how we are actually a class apart. Just different in our treatment. And that's where we get to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's your point.
Thank you, Judge. All right, I know a little bit about this. I thank God every morning that I get to be a lawyer. It's just amazing what a gift that has been to help others. And there's just so much you can do. I sat on the Texas Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the state of Texas. We have a sister court that handles the Court of Criminal Appeals. So this case went to the Court of Criminal Appeals. Now, if you recall earlier, I said you have an automatic right from the district court level, probate level, to go to the courts of appeals. Here in Harris County, it's the 1st and 14th Court of Appeals. So you automatically have that right. The Texas Supreme Court, the Court of Criminal Appeals, you don't have an automatic right. Texas Supreme Court is a discretionary court. Only takes cases that are significant to the jurisprudence of Texas. And that can be a lot of cases. It can't take them all. So the average is about 12% of all the cases that are filed annually. Then if you have to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, the average is about the same. So the odds of you getting to the United States Supreme Court are extremely, extremely low. So these lawyers had a very, very difficult task to begin with. You know, I've been fortunate. I've had a case go up to the United States Supreme Court. We actually won that case, 7-2 decision. And then when I was on the Texas Supreme Court, I joined a dissent, which means justices don't agree with the majority of the opinion, the majority of judges. Just my law school classmate and friend, Justice Guzman, wrote a dissent. I joined that dissent because I thought it was the right answer to the legal question that we were faced with. The losing party petitioned the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court accepted that case. And they reversed the Texas Supreme Court, and they adopted the language in the dissent of the Texas Supreme Court, and the majority was written by Justice Scalia. So I had the privilege of meeting Justice Scalia, just about everybody on the United States Supreme Court when I was younger. And for me, it was a privilege to see Justice Scalia, and we agree with Justice Guzman and Justice Medina on their dissent, and that's my experience there. We talked about Carlos Cadena earlier. He's in my view, an unsung hero. I have the privilege of practicing all over the United States. Now it's primarily in Texas. I practice in Bexar County. You have to search Bexar County, and there's a little plaque that honors Justice Cadena, who's the first justice in Texas, Chief Justice in Texas. In my view, there should be a monument to him outside of that building. And maybe, we can inspire a group of people in San Antonio to come up with that. Or just a better plaque. It needs to be recognized. But as you learned, he joined the team as a brief writer. Now, brief writers, we don't get much credit. It's the lawyers that are doing the speaking. But he actually wrote the brief. And you have to have a well-written brief to get anybody's attention. If you don't have a well-written brief, it's going to die on the vine. So you students who don't like to write, I just implore you to hone in on your writing skills. Learn how to write. And the way to become a good writer is to write. Every great writer, you look at the great literature, they have an editor. Right now, you release all these apps. There's an editor right on your computer. So use it. Learn how to write it. And then, of course, you got to read. So Justice Cadena, the Chief Justice, he was an excellent writer. So he wrote the brief. And he also started oral argument, which wasn't recorded because oral argument, for whatever reason, started earlier. And Gus Garcia got there on time, but the court started earlier. And so Justice Cadena opened the argument. So he started, very important, because those justices, oh man, I'm done with this. He had a good brief, made a great presentation. Gus Garcia comes in and he finishes it. Now this decision, as we sit here today, looks so easy. It looks like, well, sure, I can decide that. It's simple. But it wasn't easy. It was extremely difficult because the position that Texas took was the right legal position. May not have been the right moral position, but it was the right legal position. So what do these judges do? Okay, what is the law? The law says, going back to the treaty that you heard about, the law says, all right, the border went over here, now you got a chance to be an American citizen, or you can be a citizen of Mexico, which you want. Oh, I'll stay here, I'm staying here. Okay, then you're white. And so you're white or black. And the reason, as you heard earlier, you're white or black, because the 14th Amendment was written after the Civil War, right? Part of the Reconstruction. And so when it was written, it was thought it should only apply to black Americans who were given citizenship and given all the rights, on paper anyway, all the rights that everybody else had. Except for Native Americans, except for Asians, except for brown people, except for this. So that's what was happening. And so this team, they get up there, they present this argument. One of the justices said, what are Mexican Americans? We call them greasers down there, don't they? Well, are you kidding me? But, you know, they were not educated. So, look, many of you have faced some type of comment. You know, just, I don't pay attention to that because people are just uneducated. But you got U.S. Supreme Court Justice, they didn't call them greasers down there. So he presented the argument brilliantly, and according to The Class Apart, a beautiful documentary I encourage all of you to watch. It's on Prime. Judge Medina and I watched it last night, probably for about the 10th time in preparation for this. But in response to that, allegedly Gus Garcia said, my people were here in Texas long before that wetback Sam Houston came. So he gave it back to him. You know, I wish I could have seen that presentation, but all accounts, he was a brilliant lawyer. He was a great orator. And we don't, a lot of people, when you see young people, are you going to be a good lawyer? You like to argue. Lawyers don't argue. We reason. So he was able to reason with that 9-member Supreme Court justice. He was able to convince them that while the law is correct, as it's written in Texas, it's not applied. It's not applied equally. It's not applied to my people equally, because you can't look just at black and white. You have to look beyond that. And as Judge Medina said, they had the statistics done by Judge DeAndre to prove it. So that evidence was absolutely crucial. And of course, they didn't know the outcome. It was a big risk for them. If they win that argument, it's landmark. If they lose, things stay the same. They got to wait for another opportunity to get up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I said it's just rare to do that. So I can't imagine the argument they made. It was so compelling. But the good part about that is, if you want to study further, that the Chief Justice Brennan wrote the majority opinion. Now, he was from California before he was appointed to the United States Supreme Court. He's a former Attorney General for California, former Governor for California. And by his own admission, he did things that he had great regret. He pushed for and advocated for the internment of Americans during World War II, who just happened to be of Japanese descent. American citizens born in the United States, as you will learn in your history courses, were put in camps. They were segregated from the rest of the Americans. So he had that, and he was part of that. He pushed, when he was the governor of Texas, for segregation. But when he put his hat on as a judge, he's no longer a politician. He's going to read this law. He has the experience that we talked about to understand what it was like for the Mexican Americans in his community. Part of the Zoot Suit riots that happened right after World War II or during World War II. If you dress differently, you were looked upon badly. There were riots all over California, even here in Beaumont, Texas. The Zoot Suit riots. Study that. There's a movie made about it. Zoot Suit. I think Edward James Olmos is in it. And so the Chief Justice had all those experiences. Now he had an opportunity to really study the Constitution, to really understand what this 14th Amendment means. And in my view, it's the most important amendment that we have, because as Judge Pamela likes to say, and I hope I shouldn't mind if I say this, when we say y'all, we mean all y'all. All y'all are protected. I may have gone beyond what I'm supposed to talk about, so.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Has anybody figured out whether it was Carlos Cadena who came up with a class apart phrase? Would that have been more likely than not?
That's a great question. I know that was in a documentary, maybe somebody remembers. It may have been a brief writer, or just a collaboration of minds. You sit down there and talk, but I don't know.
So nobody has ever found definitively, or at least a suggestion that this probably since he was a brief
says
writer.
it was a brief writer, and like I said, even Gus Garcia says Justice Cardenas doesn't get enough credit, because as I said, you got to have a good brief, otherwise the justices aren't going to pay attention.
Chair, tell the audience about
What's the question?
So the question is that one of the justices asked if any of the Mexican-American team members needed interpreters.
Judge De Anda said that, yeah.
And the response was, no, we don't, but if you don't understand English or Spanish, we can get one for you.
We're just going to close up here and let you know what happened in the court, in the Supreme Court afterwards. The decision of the Supreme Court.
It was unanimous, which was huge. And then make it to the Supreme Court. And I want y'all to understand, especially in the days before electronic filing or anything like that, it costs money to appeal. You have to print out records, you have to pay people in order to move forward. And who helped pay for that? LULAC. 100%. And so we're going to go ahead and kind of mention the part that they said. Circumstances or chance may well dictate that no person in a certain class will serve on a particular jury or during some time or particular period. But it taxes our credibility to say that a mere chance resulted in there being no members of Mexican-American class of over 6,000 jurors called in the past 25 years. The result was this discrimination, whether or not it was conscious decision on the part of any individual jury commissioner. The judgment of the conviction must be reversed.
Somebody doesn't trust you to use the same bathroom as them, or doesn't even want you to be buried in the same funeral home as them, or come into a restaurant where they are they going to be a fair juror to you? Now, Pete Hernandez did shoot somebody and kill him. It was because he was called a gimp who couldn't get a lady, and so it was a bar fight. So he was retried, and he was convicted by a more fair jury, theoretically, and sentenced to 20 years. But the fact that he even went to trial with all of the evidence against him was a risk for him. So Gus Garcia actually fought for him to get parole. He sent numerous letters to the parole board. He visited in person. He made calls, and he said this man risked a death sentence in going to trial so that we could fight this case and fight for Mexican Americans to be recognized as having the right to sit on juries. And so he did get parole after 9 years of serving time in prison, thanks to Gus Garcia's advocacy, which is funny, right? We think that this is fair, even though none of us support murder and think it's fair for someone who murdered someone to be convicted. But we also understand that it's important that anyone who's charged with a crime get a fair trial and a fair sentence. And so that's what happened in this case, and that's why this case is so important. Thank you.
Yeah, my mom and dad are here, Ralph and Vera Vasquez. They were a part of La Huelga here in Houston, Texas, and I just want to say thank you so much. The busing and the integration of the students was occurring also. The law stated one thing, but the actions were another. So the Mexican students and the black students were the only students being transported away from their home schools, and the English students stayed in their home schools. So my parents and a group of civil rights activists fought against that, and they won. All the students are protected and have benefited from their actions. Thank you.
It was a short program, but we can talk about this so much longer. I wish we could. These are some things I want you to watch. The Long Game, incredibly good story. It's based on a true story. It's, I know Judge Medina and I saw it on Netflix.
I understand that this case was what made LULAC very strong among all Mexican Americans and any Latino all over the United States. And gave them the power to do many other things that opened up their door. Some of these young people don't know what LULAC has done over the years, and they need that as well. But I would like for you, David, to tell people how LULAC is the one who started Head Start. Head Start was a LULAC program before it was the United States program. They started SARE, Jobs for Progress. That was a LULAC entity. And MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, was all, those entities were all started by LULAC.
Okay, I'm going to let the great historian, he's a walking CD talk about that. But before, I just want to tell really everybody here how important this case is. Because not only did it open opportunities for Mexican Americans, it's beyond that. This covered everything. I mean, you think about it. Rights for everybody. It doesn't matter. If you're in the United States, undocumented or otherwise, the United States Constitution protects you. You have due process when you're a 14th. Friend Ruben just said, the Constitution says it protects all persons, not all citizens. They distinguish them. And so know that. And so every right that you think, oh, they're not like me, they shouldn't have that, I don't know what that is, I don't approve of what they're doing. The United States Constitution, because of this Hernandez case, protects everybody, because from there it expanded. Before there, it was just black or white. There were a few cases that came out in the late 1800s that talked about discrimination against Japanese who were brought over here, Japanese who became Americans who were brought over here to work in the gold mines, work in the tunnels to build these railroads. And so there's some history there. But it's the Hernandez case that changed the landscape that began with the Brennan Court, all into the early 60s to the late 60s, that give us a broader civil rights and greater protection. So don't ever forget that. Study the Constitution, read it. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, David.
Mexican American used quite a bit, and that is because in the 1940s and 1950s, 99% of Latinos were of Mexican descent. Today, that has changed substantially. I believe Mexicans represent, people of Mexican descent in Houston is about 69%. So can you imagine if you're Salvadorian, if you're Mexican descent, or you're Honduran, and you go to a swimming pool and they say you can't go in because you're Salvadorian or Mexican or Honduran. Or you go to a movie theater and they say you can't come in here. Or you go to a cafe or a restaurant, same thing. You know, this applied even to my parents. My father, a World War II veteran, graduate of the University of Houston, degree in engineering, 6 kids, and he can't buy a home in, I forget the name, Hidden Forest, which is now 99% Latino because of him being Mexican descent. But in 1929, when LULAC started, it was because of things like this. We wanted parity. We wanted schools to be integrated. And so that's when that fight began. The Hernandez case is one of maybe 5 or 6 major legal cases that we have, beginning in 1931 when we attempted to desegregate schools in Del Rio, Texas. But we lost. We won in, I believe it was Westminster. Is that right? It was Mendez versus Westminster. We won that case. We also, and in the case that was discussed today, this was significant. But I have to say that my brother, Mitch Contreras, who is here, my sister, Pat Martin, who is here, we joined LULAC in 1965, 60 years ago. And we witnessed a little bit of that. We witnessed the signs downtown that said black and white fountains and restrooms and things like that. I can remember when my brother and I would go play baseball in the summer. We lived in an all-white neighborhood, and when it came lunchtime, we would go to someone's house and we would sit in the garage in 100-degree weather because we were not allowed to go in the house. This case here changed all of that. It was only not for the specific issues of jurors being systematically not being allowed to sit on the jury. It was much, much greater than that. But one of the things that I saw there was a picture of Macario Garcia, a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, who received this, I believe it was August of 1945. 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, he was refused service, as was indicated at a cafe in Sugar Land, Texas. And this is when LULAC began to grow again. This stimulated veterans, about 500,000 veterans of Latino descent, to join LULAC. And this was when LULAC was at its peak. And we're honored today, and we've noted that with John J. Hideda's involvement with LULAC, and especially this case, with Judge Hernandez's involvement with LULAC, because from 1945, and most people don't know this, from 1945 to 1965, LULAC in Houston was the epicenter of the Mexican-American Civil Rights Movement. So I invite you to view this wonderful exhibit over here of our history. Al Maldonado has graciously volunteered to guide you through this. He's an expert in our history. And we have a couple of requests. One of them is that the students, we'd like to get a picture of the students with the judges and justice. And in about 10 minutes, I'd like to meet the Hernandez family and the Hideda family, because those two, actually there were 3 national presidents of LULAC from Houston, Texas.
Of LULAC, and I'm currently District Deputy Director for District 18. I would like to recognize and commend LULAC Council 688 in honor of its dedication, promotion, and increasing awareness of this historical landmark case of Hernandez versus Texas civil rights case to our community. Congratulations to the organizers for your work in advancing the public's understanding and appreciation of the significant outcome via the 1954 United States Supreme Court decision. Thank you very much. Felicidades and felicidades Dia de los Madres, and happy Mother's Day for all of you here today.
Got it. Hold it.